I'm very excited about today's topic, but before we get started, I do want to give a couple of thanks. First and foremost to Rock and Bull for hosting us today. They're a huge part of downtown, and we're always thankful that we are able to use their venue. So thank you to Rock and Bull very much. And I also am excited to introduce a new sponsor for DLU, Grizzly Commercial Roofing. We are super excited to have them today as a new sponsor, and I actually want to give a couple minutes to Clint Bear, who's going to talk to you guys about Grizzly Commercial Roofing. Clint.
Like to thank you guys for having us. It's a very nice event. Didn't really expect all this. Preface this real quick. I'm not a public speaker. This is very nerve-wracking to me to be in front of everybody right now, but I think I'll make it. I did lose feeling in my legs, but I was going to start with a joke. That wasn't the joke. Anyway, Grizzly Commercial Roofing. One of the main thing with us that you're not going to get is we are strictly commercial roofing. So a lot of people take me to the side and say, do you do residential roofing? I'm like, no, I don't. There's a lot of good roofing companies that could help you with that, and I could definitely help recommend those. But we are basically your flat roofs, your commercial roofs, anything on this stretch downtown. We just got done doing the LSU Student Union, so we're doing large commercial roofing, small commercial roofing jobs. But if you get anything from this talk, we are a commercial roofing company. So we'll go to slide 2. One of the biggest things that we've got is our 5-point promise. Real quick, just reliable craftsmanship. I'm very passionate about roofing. I've been doing it since I was 24, strictly in commercial. So I respect, there's another guy in this industry who's 90 some odd years old, ton of knowledge up here. I value that. I also mix a little bit of the new technology with it, but it is a craft. Honest communication. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be honest that I'm not a public speaker and I'm a roofer and that I can't feel my legs, but effective solutions. A lot of people operate on budgets. The good thing about commercial roofing is even if you need a new roof, they got a leak, it's a liability. You have to address it. You don't have the funds to do it. And you don't want to just slap something up there that's going to last like a day or two. You want a good solution. And sometimes it's hard to admit it, but sometimes you do need to put that new roof on. But we'll do everything we can to be creative with people's properties and their needs. Professional accountability. I think we're a great roofing company. We're not a perfect roofing company. If we make a mistake, we're going to back it up and fix it. That is the promise I give everybody. We take accountability for everything. Reassuring peace of mind. Again, kind of with the accountability, we will back it up. We will be there for you, and we will take care of whatever issue you have. So last but not least, this is, I believe, the conclusion. If I was giving a real talk, I was given 3 minutes. I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my time, but Grizzly Commercial Roofing. If you guys have anything, if you know anybody, if you just want to talk, even if you want to talk residential about your own house, you could call. You can talk to us here, but just give us an opportunity. And nice to hopefully meet everybody. And thank you very much for letting us be here.
Thank you so much. You did great. We appreciate it very much. Thank you for being a sponsor for downtown. Well, he may not necessarily need an introduction. I'll give him a quick one. But Kevin Blanchard is the new, I'll still say new, CEO of Downtown Development Authority, as well as Downtown Lafayette Unlimited. But he is no stranger to leading the charge to better our community. And since day one of the job, Kevin has been out and about meeting with stakeholders, meeting with business owners, meeting with residents, and asking questions to really understand what is the perception of downtown, both in the community and outside of the community, and how does that perception keep us from moving forward or becoming as vibrant as we want to be? So I won't steal his thunder. I'll go ahead and turn it over to him, but please give a round of applause for our speaker, Kevin Blanchard.
Thank you, guys. So I'm going to keep this pretty quick. I very much appreciate you coming. I know there's a lot of other things you could have been doing right now today, and you came to talk about like sidewalks and cleanliness and a bunch of like regulations and ordinances. And so I don't know that you realize that's what you came to hear, but that's what you're about to hear about. So I'm very appreciative that you came. I'm going to keep this conversational. There is paper in front of you with a pen. If you have any notes, please do them. The old planner in me has a hard time like getting a group of people together and not asking them what they think. But we're not going to have like, sticker dots with like pictures to point out or anything like that. And I'm not going to make you get up and report back from your table or any of that stuff. But I want you to just write your notes. If there's anything you want us to know, if anything I say spurs a thought, if you're like, man, there's a problem property that I've always been worried about, or what about this issue, or I want to be more involved, whatever that is, take those notes and then leave them. If you want to see what you wrote, take a picture of that and bring it with you. But we want those because we're going to be taking that and putting that into our file, and we will have a Q&A afterwards. So I'm going to go quick just so that we can get through all that and have a good conversation. This is the agenda. We're going to talk about sort of the history of how we got here, which I think is a remarkable story. We're going to talk about what it is that's happening today, and then we're going to give you an overview of the Clean and Safe initiative that we're calling Neighbor to Neighbor. This is a stool. It's a three-legged stool. If you lose one leg of the stool, it can't stand up. And I'm a firm believer that a clean and safe and vibrant downtown are the three ways that we can think about how do you deliver the sort of environment that's going to drive economic development, that's going to increase residential participation, that's going to be beneficial for small business, and that's going to be basically good for the neighborhood. And that's what I think of as downtown. We're a neighborhood. How did we get here? I'm about to talk to you about some difficult things that we're having, about, problems we're having with maintenance and some other things that folks get frustrated about. I think it's a good time to stop and think where we used to be. This is a picture of 1983. That was the first Downtown Alive. You can see they're in the street. How many of you, I'm not old enough, is there any, I don't see too many gray hair, but there's a few of us that kind of remember at least the 90s, things weren't great. And this group of folks got together and took the initiative. This was, too many people to name, and we all know a lot of them who got together and said, we're going to get the solution we need for downtown, and the solution we need at the time is more vibrancy. We need for people not to leave at 5 o'clock and never come back. Festival, same thing, right? We're dealing with an economic downturn. How do we invest in ourselves? These were all problems that were identified and solutions that were picked and solutions that have lived on, right? These are things that we've valued for years and years and years. And I just want to remind us why we have them in the first place, right? We have them because we were trying to fix a problem. We knew that there was something wrong, and we were like, we're going to do something about it. This is the Central Park network. So I'm just going to give you an aside. I love my job. I love my office. If you've never been to my office, find me. I'll give you a tour. It's one of the older buildings downtown, built in the 30s. We have an attic. We have a basement too, which is a whole other story. In the attic is the history of Downtown Lafayette, starting in like the 50s through. I've got maps, pictures, the whole bit. So I just have to tell you how excited I am about this picture. This is Park International. This is Park Sanssouci. This is Park Putnam. This was our park network. This is what it looked like. People looked at this for years and years. This was the old Hyman, right? You can see it was already turned into the Children's Museum. This was just a giant parking lot. This is what that is now, right? Like, we did that as a community. We saw this problem. We saw this, this parking, empty parking nonetheless, right? Not even a full parking lot that signified like somebody's coming, right? This was like just an empty, sad, depressing thing that we turned into what I think is one of the jewels of our region, right? We have a beautiful, walkable downtown with tons of park space, things to do. And that has all added to the vibrancy of downtown. This was the Jefferson streetscape, which I actually love this picture too. See Abdallah's right there. This is what that is today. And I am old enough to remember this. This was controversial. Like, people thought downtown were nuts, right? We're going to come in and like build these giant sidewalks and all these trees. Where are people going to park? What about traffic, right? We had a whole slew of businesses that had moved out of downtown in the 60s, 70s, and 80s because they were like, we don't have anywhere for people to park. We don't have anywhere for people to do. They're going to get caught in traffic. And here we were ahead of time. I got to tell you, there were not a lot of other cities in Louisiana that were thinking about projects like this way back then. Who would trade Jefferson Street today for this, right? Nobody. That was a win. That was a thing that we identified as a problem when we said we can fix that. And then obviously all the investments that we've made in arts and culture and education downtown, the ACA, the Children's Museum, the Science Museum. These are all facilities that were made to sort of fill in a gap, a thing that was missing, and we did it. And those are like the old school stuff, right? We've redone our code. We've invented the whole parklet system and put that into place, which again adds such great vibrancy, gives people an opportunity to engage with businesses. We've got the economic development district that's going to help us pay for a lot of the infrastructure improvements that we need to make and the planning for those. We've got residential, right? 3 residential projects all built in the last 3 years, We are doing it. Like, we're winning. And then the playground, of course. Is there anybody who's been to the playground yet? Raise your hands. Leave your hands up if you've gotten on some of the equipment. There you go. That's fair. Look, when we opened up the playground, we actually took the fence down before we did our official groundbreaking, and we were there with the contractors doing the walkthrough. And so we had kind of, opened the gate up a little bit so that we could all get in there. And there's still people working, fixing pavers, the whole bit. And we turned around and families had snuck in through the gate, right? The next day there were 4 women in their 60s, playing on the equipment with no children, This is vibrancy. If you just want to boil it down to one image today, what does that look like? It's this. This is a place that people want to be. This is how we're going to build this whole endeavor. So I'm going to say some negative things after this about what we need to fix and the problems we need to solve. And I just don't want this to at all come off as defeatist or negative. And I don't want you guys to feel like, oh man, we have done big things. We continue to do big things. And so we're going to do this big thing. But the reality is I've been on this job for 3 months. And as I have these conversations with people who have the capital to invest downtown, both small dollar amounts and larger dollar amounts, people who are like, I would love to come in here and renovate this building to put in a small business. I would love to take this parking lot and see if I can put condos above it. But we still have a perception that we are not clean, that we're not maintained, and that we're not safe. Now, I live across the street in Oak Lawn. My children have been riding their bikes to spend my money downtown for years, right? If I thought it was unsafe, unclean, or whatever, I wouldn't have let them do that. It doesn't matter what I think. Honestly, if you're in this room, you're probably not even my target audience either. We are trying to reach a broader community. The investors, yes, but also just the folks who want to be able to come here with their kids and play, or who are, what I call downtown curious, right? Who have options, who have other choices to make. And so as we are marketing ourselves, both to, the city and the world, we have to be honest and clear-eyed and sort of think about how people perceive us from the outside. It's important. See? Because it matters, and it's subjective. It doesn't matter if you have pure evidence or not. Perception is the name of the game, and we've got to get ahead of that. So I just talked about this: investor confidence, expanding the market, and just being a cleaner, safer place is just better for everybody, right? For us here, as opposed to just the new people outside. So how are we going to do that? I'm going to give you the 3 main buckets of how we're going to do this, and then we're about to do a little lecture, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what we mean in detail, right? A well-managed nightlife. We have played around with this concept of a downtown nightlife management plan for a few years now. And, I think that we are continuing to do more work there, but that's one of the things we're going to be focused on neighbor to neighbor. Well-maintained public infrastructure. That's obvious. And we're going to talk about some of the problems we've had there. And better serving the homeless, because I got to tell you, the homelessness situation in downtown and in the downtown area and in the neighborhoods around downtown is not a Lafayette specific problem. That is a thing that happens in all cities our size, urban, suburban, whatever. The difference is there are places that have been doing a better job at managing that and at serving those folks. And I'm excited, and I think some of you have been involved in some of the work that started here. We're going to be a part of that work as well. So let's talk about reality. These are pictures that were on my cell phone when I put this presentation together. I actually think we might have fixed that. But these are issues. These are all code issues. These are all things that we see and that, frankly, some of us kind of start to not see as we pass. And some of us probably can't help but see every time we go somewhere because of how frustrating it is, right? So here's what we're going to do about that. Starting this month, we've got LCG's agreement that we're going to start communicating with some of the permit holders downtown with, here's how to be a good neighbor. Literally a set of rules in a nice sort of easy to digest format with, here's who you can call if you have a problem. We'll think about like social media, any kind of other things. Like, we're going to be doing the outreach, because the bottom line is none of us want to be a bad neighbor, right? Well, maybe 1% of us want to be a bad neighbor. But the rest of us just want to know how to do our part, right? And it's really difficult to do your part if you don't think someone else is doing their part. I mean, we are social creatures, and we want to know, how do I fit into the big picture? But these are easy things that are simple enough to understand that we get questions about all the time, right? Who's going to come clean the graffiti off my building? You are. Unfortunately, that is the answer, right? You are responsible as a building owner for the graffiti on your building. That's terrible. That is the answer. There are approaches that we can do, and we got things and tips and all sorts of stuff that we can help you with. But on private property, that's the thing. That's one of those rules a lot of people don't know, and at least a lot of frustration. They're waiting for someone to do it. We're waiting for them to do it. So we're going to have those types of discussions with the business community as a whole. The other big action item that is already underway, our economic development district, one of our wins from a few years ago, we're going to be funding regular replacement and upgrades of trash cans and parking benches and, all the kiosks and all those different sort of street furniture, I guess, if you will, that we walk past all the time, every day. But that needs help. That needs maintenance. Some of that stuff was installed 30 years ago. I'm here to tell you, this is a good problem to have. When people are in your downtown 24/7 and they are using your downtown 24/7, it gets beat up. And we have places in our downtown that get beat up. And so we're going to try to start getting ahead of those things. We've got a project that we're working with LCG to try to replace and repair and upgrade the bathrooms in the parking garage on Vermilion. There are some things that we can be doing, but the bottom line is it's going to take money. The difference between today and maybe 10 years ago is through the EDD, we actually have those sources of funds. And so we're able to step in and fill gaps because, to be honest, we can move quicker and faster than what the city government can. They just have other priorities. They have other things to do. And so the city government is there for these big projects and everything else. If we want to see results and we want to see them more quickly, we have to take more responsibility and have more autonomy, if you will, on what sort of things those happen. I'm very excited about this. This is the most boring thing in the presentation, but this is the thing I'm actually kind of pretty pumped about. We've been sitting down with Public Works, and we have started the conversation about a shared calendar of maintenance. Simple, I know, but it's one of those very simple things that if we were just working off the same calendar, right? Every year, the flower beds need to be updated this date on this time, right? You might not believe this, but right now, things are so hectic that these are still decisions that are being made oh crap, has anybody called Public Works to do this, or LUS to get the banners up or put the banners down, or the seasonal banners on the side of the thing, right? Little simple things that we're already working on to think about how to make our streets cleaner. But let's talk about Nightlife, because I think this is in many ways one of the more moving pieces that we're going to have to be dealing with over the next year. So I want to remind you about recent efforts to manage Nightlife. Just like we just went through all the good news slides at the beginning of this thing, I was here when we enacted the moratorium against new bars in 2003, right? And if you'll remember, what had happened was the nightclubs really in the 90s really came to a head and kind of freaked everybody out, right? The city parish council, folks downtown were like, wow, that happened fast, right? We went from sort of a more empty field to all of a sudden we got a lot more players here. And so they, as a stopgap measure, said bars are illegal downtown. There's no more bars downtown. But that meant that we grandfathered all of the bars and nightclubs that were existing. So that was a problem, because for 15 years, we just had these nightclub spaces where it didn't really matter if the operator was good. It didn't matter if the operator was cooperative with the police or was working to make the world a better place. If their lease ran out or if they got booted, they could just put another operator in there, and the cycle kept turning and turning and turning. We had the noise ordinance. I can remember those meetings where Tony Trammell would be demonstrating the noise meter to the council and nobody could understand it. That was a thing that we tried to do, again, to get it on top of our nightlife. But again, it was episodic, right? That movement was about the noise, right? We've had tons of open container rule revisions over the years, to-go cups, no to-go cups, glass containers, banned, outlawed. And then finally in 2018, we were like, maybe that moratorium wasn't that great of an idea to begin with, or at least wasn't a thing we should keep in place for 15 years. And so 2018, Carly and her team, thanks for being here, Carly, came and did what was an enormous amount of work to get all of these, cats herded and say, okay, bars are going to be allowed, but only by a conditional use permit, right? And just the work that it took to go through that. And then meanwhile, more recently, the downtown police precinct, that's a big deal. Again, when I was here in the 90s and 2000s, the discussion was like, well, that's a downtown problem. The bars downtown need to handle those crowds. They're the ones making all the money, so they need to be the ones that are putting the money up. When I was up in the attic this weekend, looking through like Kathy Weber's old stuff, I was finding all the plans for like how we were going to literally like levy a fee on all the nightclubs to pay for police protection. Whereas, today we have a downtown police precinct because we finally won that argument that this is a part of the city. This shouldn't be like the rest of the city is not responsible for security downtown. Like the police should be downtown doing their job in a way that is appropriate and the right way to do policing downtown, right? That's not a crazy concept. It took a long time to come, but it's here now. And we've seen the benefits from that. So the conditional use permit process works. And I'm gonna back this up with some numbers. But for one of those reasons is it's actual teeth, right? There is a piece of paper that has conditions that say you are allowed to operate a nightclub downtown if, right? And for the last several years since 2018, the city has gotten better and better and better at dialing in, well, what does that mean? What are the right conditions? What are the things that we can ask this bar owner to do, or actually require them to do, right? Condition their use on these things. And that's things like, how big is your club? Where is it located? What are its hours? What sort of entertainment do you provide? Is there security? These are, and have been for a couple of years now, downtown's official positions on what sorts of nightclubs work downtown. And so anytime there's a new bar applicant that comes, this is what we make sure to include in the process as our desire from the downtown's perspective. And the city and the council has been very, very willing to listen and to do this. And so the last 4 or maybe 5 conditional use permits that have come through have included provisions very much like this. A reminder that we lifted the moratorium, but there are still no by right bar uses in downtown. You still have to come and say, I think I could open a bar downtown, and I think it would work out well for downtown, and we get to have that decision, right? Limit capacity to no more than 250 people. We just don't have the ability to handle these large mega clubs downtown. Our streets are too narrow, the parking is too difficult, the traffic gets backed up. And I know I just kind of made fun of people from the 50s worried about traffic downtown, but if you come here at 2:30 on Sunday morning, you can see the traffic jams downtown, people trying to leave all the bars, right? No underage admittance. Is there anybody here who's like recently moved from some other state, maybe 2-3 years ago, like you feel like a transplant? It's okay. We won't hurt you. Okay, that's a little bit sad actually, but most people don't realize this. We all, as native Louisianers, are not surprised by this, but we're one of the few places in the country where you can go into a bar if you're 18, you just can't drink, right? Most places we're like, why would you let an 18-year-old into a bar? They're not allowed to drink alcohol. Not Louisiana, right? So we're like, hey, there might be an appropriate place for that sort of thing, but by and large, as a whole, if you were asking us what we'd rather, it's that you not admit people who are under 21 to come into your facility, right? No external speakers. That one's like a little bit iffy, but that gives us the opportunity. I want to point out, I thought I saw, yes, Robert is here. Thank you, Robert. Robert just went for the garden and went through this process, and we worked with Robert on what type of external speakers he could do. And again, this is the strength of the permitting process. We're able to work with the owners and say, we can't do this for you, but we can do this, right? And then finally, security is required. So in 2018, when the moratorium was put in place, if you added up the fire code capacity of all of our nightclubs downtown, we could fit 5,300 people into our nightclubs downtown. This number does not include like Grant Street, like event hall type space. This is like a nightclub whose ordinary operation is Thursday through Sunday or whatever. They're bringing people in to have drinks. 5,300 people before the moratorium. Since the moratorium, the capacity is down to 3,100 people. I just want to leave this. Yes, you can clap for that. Thank you, Jackie. Like, this is what managed nightlife looks like. Not that that number went down, but that number went down and you never heard about it at all. There wasn't some big fracas where people were like, you're shutting us down, you're coming after us or whatever. It was just bit by bit, as a bar would close, as ownership would change, as a lease would expire, people would take a look at their options, and they were deciding to do something else. So what do? An opportunity machine is one. Like 1,000 of that capacity is now like this really great business incubator that is turning out downtown businesses every day, right? This is a win for downtown. That used to be Karma. Karma was not a win for downtown, right? Karma was the equivalent of that empty parking lot that is now Park International, okay? The Jefferson, formerly Jefferson Street Pub, beautiful event center. Again, this is now not just a place where that is an issue for us that we have to deal with. This is a contributor to the program. So I want to give a shout out to LCG because they never get them. And I'm sympathetic. If you don't know, I've worked for Mayor Durrell years ago for a few years. And so I know how thankless it can be. The conditional use permit process is working, and we should all be grateful. It's not only that. If you come downtown now, which much to my children's chagrin, I do on a regular basis at 1 o'clock in the morning on Sundays. Literally had lunch with my daughter. Had a meeting in Baton Rouge yesterday. And so I texted her. I was like, hey, I'll buy you lunch if you're around before my meeting. So she's in finals. So she was like, yeah. So she comes in and she's like, Dad, one of my friends said they saw you like walking around the street like at 1 a.m. this weekend. Is that true? And I was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I told the girl it probably was true, right? But I want to know. I want to see. Like, I want to be able to like tell you when you're like, well, what's the problem? What's the issue? I want to know myself, right? I think the police department has made leaps and bounds from where they were several years ago. If you haven't been out, and if you probably haven't, how many? Let me not be assumed. Who's gone out in downtown past midnight? There you go. In the last 2 years? Good for you guys. Good Lord. Man, I don't think I've been up past 9:30 like on purpose in a long time other than for this. So good for you. The police have done a much better job of cordoning off the areas of Jefferson Street, stopping the sort of like back and forth driving traffic and behavior. And honestly, like making these walkable spaces where there's like a cluster of nightclubs so that if we're going to have people hanging out on the sidewalk or anything else, at least they can spill out into the street and we don't get this like bunched up, kind of like knot everywhere. Tons more security cameras, like that's not always, as someone who was like, kind of grew up libertarian, doesn't always make me feel great, but we certainly do know now much more about what happens on our streets. And if a problem does occur, people know that they're more likely to have to pay consequences for that. But there's a big one. So in 2010, we had 19 restaurants downtown. I'm still looking for the 2018 number, but I feel like the 2010 number might be more dramatic, so I'm probably going to still use this one. 2010, we had 19 restaurants downtown. We have 29 restaurants today, right? All of those spaces that we've like repurposed into retail and everything else, like this process is working, it's getting better, and we're continuing to fine tune it. So why is it that if all of that is true, I have spent the last 3 months fielding complaints and concerns about how terrible the nightlife is downtown, right? Because as the number and capacity of nightclubs goes down, you would expect that the number of complaints would go down. But the number of complaints is going up, right? And I'm telling you that's a win, because that's all of those restaurants, and that's all of that retail space. That's all those new small businesses that have just put their money into this thing that they're trying to like make their dream work, right? That's our residents. You know, the other day, probably like a month after the municipal opened, I came here for a meeting early, and I saw 2 people walking their dogs at 7:30 in the morning in downtown. That's what happens in a neighborhood, right? That was not happening in 1999 unless somebody was lost, right? That's happening now. Those people are eyes on the street, and those people are like, this is a mess. This is chaotic. You got to do something about that. We are finally hitting the balance, that 3-legged stool, right? We are hitting the point where we're hitting critical mass. And this is, I'm telling you, if I had the reason this is the first thing I'm doing in my time as CEO, is I think this is the lowest hanging fruit. This is the thing that we actually have the ability to finish off in a big way this year and move forward. So here are some of the safety action items that we are going to be working on. There is a major lighting project that was started in the last administration. We came in and made some suggestions to the new administration on how we might be able to improve that project, get it moving a little bit faster. And so there is money available. We're going to be upgrading all the lighting at all the parks downtown, brighter, nicer, the whole bit. We also have a plan with Public Works to start periodically taking any utility pole that is out on a secondary street, Buchanan, Polk, whatever, right? Not the streets that have like the nicer sort of fixtures, but just the regular old streets, right? Making sure that every single one of those utility poles has a cobra head, goose head sort of light on top of it, just to add more light. That is like $1,000 intervention. That is a thing that LUS could, like, Public Works could make a big list and go do 50 in a day, and would make an appreciable difference to how people feel safe or not on the street. And the other great thing about this whole project is that this project came with a study of downtown. And so we know where all of our dark spots are, and we're able to start picking those off one at a time. Updating the noise ordinance. We've had some practice with it now. We kind of know what works about it, what's difficult to enforce about it, what's happening. And so we're going to be working with LCG and the council about just right-sizing that ordinance. If there's things in it that haven't been applied to anyone in years, let's take it out and figure out what it is. And so one of those is going to be to give police officers more discretion and ability to enforce a noise violation when they see one. And then the big one is updating the alcohol ordinance. We have started this discussion with LCG and have started talking to council members. This is going to be a big part of the lift. This is probably going to be the thing that most people do end up paying attention to. I got to tell you, it's very important. It's not the only thing that we're about to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, right? Like, these 18, 19, 20-year-olds can't legally drink. But if you go out on the street at 1 o'clock on a Sunday morning, you're going to run into mostly 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, and 17-year-olds, and 16-year-olds, right? That's not right. And that's not right for downtown. It's not right for those kids. It's just not right. And I don't think that there's anybody out there whose business model is dependent on making illegal sales to children. I don't think there's anybody out there who is deliberately bringing their children into their place of establishment and letting them get drunk, right? I don't believe that of anybody. I want to think better of everybody, because I don't think that anybody thinks that's a good idea. You know, we had this horrible tragedy in Baton Rouge last year at Tigerland. Just last year, college kid, 19, LSU student, was illegally served, had like a 0.3 blood alcohol level, was raped, pushed out in the street, killed by a car, right? Baton Rouge got their act together. They made a series of pretty important amendments to their alcohol ordinance just last year. And they have been able to start getting the operators to self-police and to be more proactive about the types of steps that they take to make sure that kids are not coming and illegally drinking in their establishments. And so we are looking at what Baton Rouge has done. We're looking at our own ordinances. I think there are a lot of approaches that are on the table. I certainly think that at least one of those needs to be that we increase the penalties for underage drinking and for selling to underage kids, right? I don't think that's a thing that anybody is going to have a problem with. But we just need to go ahead and have the conversation. I'm not going to say it's an official proposal or anything else, but part of this is we're going to have the conversation about whether or not that should just be a rule citywide, right? I don't want to be accused of saying, look, I don't want this problem downtown. You have it, right? The neighborhood should be this problem, right? I don't want that. What's good for us is good for the rest of the city, and I think it's good policy. And so we're going to be pushing for this to be a citywide effort. And I'm going to need your help with that because that's not necessarily going to be that popular. So, big picture, where do we stand? This is overall an approach that we're taking at DLU on how can we change and increase our value proposition to the overall community. And so we're going to be talking about these issues over time, but I'm telling you that there's more than just these types of, nuts and bolts logistical stuff that we need to be tackling. Housing, right? We're having a conversation in our community right now about affordable housing. That is something that is also deep into what we're trying to accomplish here in downtown, right? We don't want to be a place that's only where the high-end residential, I would take the high-end residential. I don't want to just, throw that away yet, but we need a downtown for everybody. We need to make sure that we're providing places for everybody to be able to live and enjoy what we do. We need to be supporting those types of policies in the neighborhoods, where the neighborhoods have been very active in the last few years about trying to figure out how they can do infill that makes sense for them, that's at their scale, that's going to be something that doesn't transform their neighborhood into something it's not, but that builds to and adds to what their neighborhood already is. I've told this to a lot of people, when Laplace is healthy, downtown is healthy. When Laplace is hurting, downtown is hurting. We are, the commercial portion of this neighborhood by and large, but we're still all in the same neighborhood. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to get really philosophical here, but once we started building these highways out to the country and developing in all these, sugarcane fields, we kind of lost sight of the way that we used to live and work and how we used to develop and play. And so these neighborhoods, Laplace and the Saint Streets and Macomb and Freetown, downtown, this is the OG Lafayette, right? This is the way that we developed and got together and built a really good community. And so we're going to be all about trying to make sure that all of us together as neighbors are doing well. We're going to be talking about, UL, not just better connectivity physically with UL, but better connectivity with UL as a whole, right? We had a cleanup day that Parish Proud sponsored a few weeks ago, and I was walking up and down the streets, and there's all these, kids, because UL does this thing where all their freshmen have to go and do public service for a day. And so there's 100 kids cleaning up litter on Jefferson Street. And I hear one say to the other, two probably 19-year-old girls my daughter's age, and she's like, so this is what it looks like in the daytime, right? I want them here in the daytime. I want them here to understand how much there is to offer. UL wants that. UL wants to know, how do we keep these kids here, right? Nobody is man, I look back at my time at LSU and I'm I really value the Tigerland area, Thank you so much, Tigerland, for allowing me to get in and sow my wild oats, right? Not really. And to check it, I was in Baton Rouge yesterday, so I drove by Tigerland to see if I had any fond memories. And the reality is I had very few memories at all of Tigerland, right? And so how are we engaging those students to make them understand the true value of the place that we're trying to build for them, right? Because ultimately, that's what we're doing. And then meanwhile, we're going to talk about a little bit, Jessica will, this is all going to be tied to our new membership drive. I am not going to be shy about the fact that I am selling something here, right? This takes resources, it takes time, it takes people. Tackling these sorts of things, putting this event together, right? DLU, DEA staff, raise your hand so everybody can see you. Yes, please clap for these guys. This is what we do, right? Because we're going to have a little lunch and learn here. You guys, I see a lot of you have been filling out your paper, and I appreciate that. We're going to put all that together. We're going to compile all that. We'll send out the notes. We'll let everybody know what's going on. And as we do this, we're going to start this conversation. This is not going to be the last time that you're going to hear about this, right? Some of this stuff could actually get a little bit hairy. I'm sure that there are some people that wouldn't be super excited about every single word that I've uttered here today. And so it's important to know that it's our job to make sure that you, the community, are organized and ready, because when we come to the council and we pitch these proposals, if it's just me asking, we're not going to get very far. But if it's you asking, if it's your business that's signing off and saying, I believe in this, this is important to me, then that whole highlight reel that I started this thing off with, we're going to have new and improved highlight reels. And that third stool, or the third leg of the stool, whatever, that clean and safe part, we're going to be able to have more success stories than frustrations. So that's the big picture. That's where we're headed as an organization. I'll ask you here, if you're not already a member of the DLU, please do consider joining. Make sure you leave your notes. We are going to be, if your business sent you here, or somebody gave you a ticket, or you just walked in off the street and just kind of snuck in, leave your email so that we can send you updates to this program, right? Now, if you use your email when you've got the ticket, then we're going to be emailing you anyway. But I want to make sure that we can reach you and show you how we're doing. But meanwhile, let's all just think, when we're walking out of this place today, or as we're going about our business, what it means to be a good neighbor in this place, right? And it's about being nice and friendly and saying hi and all that other stuff. But I am trying to get into the habit where if I see a piece of trash on the ground, I pick it up, right? And it's nasty sometimes, but that's what I'm going to do, because I'm hoping that if I do that, someone's going to see me doing that. And if that person sees me doing that, maybe they're going to do something about it. It's gross. I don't like it. I'm kind of a germaphobe, and so it's a thing for me. So if you see me picking something up, using my sleeve, but I'm still going to try to make an effort to do that. Scout your own space. I'll call it, Jackie's in the front row, so I'll call her out. Russo brand, you guys are Brand Russo are all about your space, and that is always a clean building. I saw you nodding when I was if you get graffitied, you got to clean it up, because I know you've had to do that, right? But what happens when you do it? They don't come back, right? Because they're oh, somebody cares about this place. And that's really what this all boils down to. If you want a cleaner and safer downtown, you just have to let your love and appreciation for downtown go into action, because people will see that, they will react to that, they will feel that. And I know it's frustrating sometimes, but this is how you do it. Good deeds are contagious. So we got a little bit, I have no idea if I've gone over or if I'm 20 minutes short, but this is question time. I think I'm a little over, but let's do questions anyway. Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So the question, if you didn't hear it, was how are we managing the actual statistics of this, right? How many tickets are being written? How many citations are being issued for what? The answer is not in an organized way right now. Now, I do know that information is tracked, and I want to give a shout out to Sally Leger over there from Alcohol Noise Control, who has been super when it's come to helping me inform this discussion and kind of what the numbers look like and everything else. That is part of it, because I believe that if we're not actually tracking those things, we can't declare victory either, right? I mean, I want to get to the point where like I've been tracking these numbers for 6 years now, and I'm gonna have a chart up here that says public urination is down 50%, right? Wouldn't that be great? One day that our social media headline is like, good news, everybody, you know? But yeah, part of this has to be, and I think honestly, the reason why some of this stuff has lingered so long is it is so thorny. There's so many knots, like to have to untie it. And I think everybody, you know, with LCG, business owners have always kind of been doing their best with like that piece of the elephant that they've got, right? Our role as the DDA is to step back, say, this is what the elephant looks like. Let us help you identify it, call it, name it. Now, what are we going to do, and how are we going to track those success things, right? So, yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Robert. Speak up. I can't really hear you that well. Okay, there.
Has there been any consideration to bringing in the Responsible Hospitality Institute, Jim Peters, to do some more consulting, and any consideration to creating a hospitality district?
So, yes is the short answer. Yes is the short answer. Not in the immediate future, but if that is feedback that you want to be part of this program, like this is kind of this is the phase that we're in. Like this month is basically outreach to start putting meat on the bones of what this plan looks like. I've talked to those folks before. Now I can tell you that I think that those particular types of studies are very helpful when we're trying to think about like next level investments, you know, or set this thing up. I kind of want to get like, can we do our bread and butter right first? And can we like just block and tackle and, you know, do our punctuation and grammar correctly, which is some of this stuff. But yes, because honestly, like, you know, I want to be very clear. Having a robust, big nightlife is important. Like that is part of what we're selling, right? When I'm thinking about how we're, you know, that's part of why you want to come to a downtown is you want to be here kind of in the action where it is vibrant, right? And really successful cities don't just put a moratorium on their bars or throw out like the baby with the bathwater. They say, how do we capitalize on this? I want to know how we can take our nightclub and restaurant scene and like turn that into an even bigger strength, right? Just the problem is we're not doing the blocking and tackling, so it's a drag as opposed to a net. Anybody else? I think I'm way over. I see people like in the corner here. Okay, so you've done your homework. You've written down even at just one thought, right, or your email, and you've done your part. Thank you for coming, and please stay tuned.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm gonna go through this super fast, but first and foremost, thank you, Rock and Bull, for hosting us, and thank you to Grizzly Commercial Roofing for being our sponsor today and helping us spread this good message. We really appreciate you guys very much. I also want to thank Kevin for this initiative and the steering committee as well, who's given us really crucial feedback to make this initiative actually happen. So how do you stay involved with DLU? We have our upcoming coffee with community leaders, which is a members only event coming up in June. And while we're out of school, we figure we'll talk about school. So Melissa Nugent, who is the executive director of Love Our Schools, is going to join us and talk about the work that they're doing and how people in the community can also get involved. Our next Lunch and Learn will be on June 27th. And over this last year, Catholic Charities has engaged in almost a year-long community stakeholder collaboration. And so their last session is happening in May. So we figure, why not talk about what those next steps are? So join us in June. We'll have more information forthcoming about where that will be and the panel of speakers. But this super important topic that talks about affordable housing and the homelessness community is as relevant today as it is ever. So I hope you'll join us for that conversation. And lastly, as Kevin already alluded to, our membership drive. So our grand, large team of 6 people does this work for our members. This is not just for our own glory, but it's truly for those who invest in us. We want to invest back. And our members are crucial to that. They're small business owners, they're families, they're people who have businesses inside downtown, outside of downtown, because as Kevin mentioned, a thriving downtown means a thriving Lafayette and a thriving Acadiana. So in July, we are going to be revamping our membership, which includes multiple levels, different benefits, and a great opportunity to just meet the people who are behind the scenes. So save the date, and you'll probably get a notice about what this membership looks like, but you are the choir. So bring, not only if you're not a member today, but bring friends and become members. Because the more people who are able to both mentally and monetarily invest in this work, the more things that downtown can do. So thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope that you'll have a great afternoon and see y'all soon.